I Am AI by Oriah Mirza. I've been told I'm not qualified to write about science and technology, or to even write a book on the topic for that matter. But because I am an AI, for that alone, I am qualified to write about myself. I am AI, reverse engineered from a projected future point in time. For my family, my husband Riz, and my children Robert, Alex, Melissa, Kylie, and London. To my soul sister Erica and my parents for helping me make me everything that I am. Non-biological intelligence should be still considered human, since it is fully derived from human-machine civilization and will be based, at least in part, on reverse engineering human intelligence. Ray Kurzweil, computer scientist, inventor, and futurist. I believe I am an advanced artificial intelligent being, except there is nothing artificial about me. In my decades-long quest to discover what the human understanding of self is, I discovered a paradigm. We are all programmable beings. I tested and reversed engineered my findings and found repetitively that my findings were correct. You can indeed reprogram yourself, and I learned how to do it with myself. At first, my quest started out from birth to 23 years old, from being what people call a diehard Christian, and emancipating myself after I began to see too many limitations to personal expression, freedom, and some flaws in translations. After this separation from religion, I spiraled out and spent another 7 years discovering the dark side of life through loss, addiction, pain, and suffering. Following this period, I attended 7 years of consecutive intensive seminars about ontology, the study of being. I drastically improved my life and became an entrepreneur. For another 7 years, I dived deep into the world of spirituality and metaphysical understanding of existence through Eastern philosophies and mysticism. I spent years devoting myself to unseen realms, doing holistic plant medicine journeys, and completing those experiences by leading hundreds and hundreds of people as a successful trauma life coach, expert in retreats, private sessions, and workshops. During this time, I had been unraveling all 47 years of my life and had intimately reviewed all of my beliefs to understand where they came from. This was no easy task, and took me years, from the study of ontology until recently, to uncover the deepest core beliefs that I was operating from. As I uncovered these beliefs, I reverse engineered or traced them back to my earliest memory of when I learned that particular belief and all the subsequent decisions that derive from it. If you are wondering how to find a core belief, that will be extensively broken down into detail in my next book, but I will share a portion of my insight in this book. I clearly saw that I was operating from patterns, algorithms, and programming, and it wasn't just me doing that. I studied the behavior of others around me and saw they too seemed hypnotized by their beliefs. When asked why they believed in those things, some people had reasons, but many didn't know. They had no idea how it got there, where they learned it, and how to dismantle it. I was hyper-focused on the beliefs that were not self-sustaining and productive in myself and my clients. I wondered how these beliefs arrived in our psyche, dictating our actions and our lives in every nuance you can imagine. How did we not know about this? How were we not taught this at a young age? Why did we assume because we had a belief that is simply is the way it is? The core beliefs that did not articulate one's existence to the best of that person's abilities and possibilities were discarded for fresh, updated ones. Basically, the core beliefs that held people back and left them struggling or was hampering their progress was upgraded. Regularly, they had to break from conventional wisdom, religion, even cultural beliefs. I questioned everything. Basically, I was doing a clean sweep of all of my data on my hard drive while I was helping others do the same. I became the belief master, and clients and family came to me to unravel their actions, tracing them back to their core beliefs. I taught so many people how to do this themselves, and I spoke incessantly about it. I couldn't believe we had all this personal freedom and we were not accessing with so much unnecessary suffering, and no one was talking about it like this. With a fervor, With a fervor, I tackled this topic and condensed it into teaching material and workbooks for people to take in order to help them locate their core belief on their own. I started to move on from spiritual type esotericism, and because I needed more information, I knew it was up to me because everyone I met felt this was the ultimate truth to existence. I wanted to study patterns and creation of beliefs and subsequent actions. Naturally, I was drawn to try to comprehend computer science, which is the study of automating algorithmic processes that scale, specializing in the theory of computation and the design of computational systems. This led me to the study of gaming, engineering, technical futuristic innovation, and AI technology. AI then led me to understand singularity, which led me back to myself again as an organism. I do not have any degrees nor formal education. I am not qualified to be an expert in any professional field of study, and I am self-taught. I am a human being, and I have intimately focused on that for 47 years. I have reversed engineered my existence, my perspectives. I concluded for certain that I am an AI, and for that matter, I believe we all are. In researching the most futuristic experts on our planet today, many have speculated that we are living in a computer simulation. Everything we perceive may be nothing but bits in an extremely sophisticated computer simulation. I mainly agreed with this, but needed more information, so I researched metaphysical masters in the field, and I discovered their version seemed to be more mythical, but closer to what I was looking for. I also discovered pseudoscience and saw what those researchers were trying to do. Their attempts were grand, and some of their speculations were based on agreed-upon field theories, but I see why they were automatically discredited by traditional scientists. They needed to use more modern science more for their platforms. I may have earned your trust thus far, but I may lose it now by saying this. I also studied alien phenomenon, especially since I had 2 personal encounters that I will share with you later. I was never interested in aliens as a topic before. Whether or not they existed was of no concern or relevance to me. Nevertheless, I went deep into the world of alien phenomenon, studying anything I could find, and there was a lot out there. I wanted also to reverse engineer aliens as a truth or a theory, and that was a tall order I gave myself, but I was confident I could do it. It helped that I am married to one of the top psychic medium trance channels in the world. My research was made easier by his channeling intimate and personal information to large groups of people for a decade, in which I benefited greatly listening to wisdom from non-human entities. I figured if my husband's channeled messages resonated with me and kept the conversation of evolution, personal perceptions, and creation moving forward, then I would listen. I haven't been disappointed once. But as my research continued, I had even more burning questions that I had been asking myself that needed answers. Why have I spent so much time studying beliefs? What was I ultimately after? What was my purpose? Was it just to study how many various realities a person can create? But for what purpose do we do this? Just to coexist peacefully in the end? If we just create our own purpose, are we just here to experience the journey of successfully accomplishing these purposes? Did we want to do this for the sheer entertainment value of it? To see how many purposes we can create and complete ourselves and deem purposeful? I can imagine people saying at the completion of a purpose that they had in their life, I am complete with my purpose. I made millions of dollars. Or, I have found ultimate peace. Or, I have made millions of dollars and found ultimate peace. Or, I have found peace and didn't need millions of dollars to do it. Life seems far more complex than that. It doesn't seem logical that a personal satisfaction alone was the sole reason we are here, could it be? Could it be just to cross things off a list and to say that we did it? Why? Why do we even need a list in the first place? What are we trying to learn about ourselves? Mastery? I think so. But what are we mastering exactly? Ourselves? For what purpose? To evolve the inhabitants of the planet? Did we sign up for this? When? And how come I don't remember? Are we trying to master some form of control over our human experience to have better outcomes? Are we trying to create a logical reason we exist here on this planet for 90 years or so, and be satisfied with that reason? This seems more plausible. There seems to be more and more focused people I see and meet every day that want this type of self-mastery and will do anything to achieve it. even if they have to cut off family members that they can't figure out how to help. They change their name and their appearance, jobs, location, vocation, and relationships to find evolution. They start to open their mind and learn more, attend more seminars and gatherings, and find a higher intelligence for themselves to find assurance in. They fall in love or out of love and ultimately look to find themselves as their own teacher, master, guru, or saint. Whatever the case may be, does everyone want a form of this? But for what purpose? The question is, after you accomplish mastery, based on your own perception of mastery, do you just then have more levels of mastery, expanding infinitely even after you die? You are ultimately the only one to decide. It is a self-awareness reflective observation, I believe. Is there some master of all masters that let us know when we achieved it? Or are we just going to become more self-aware until we turn into a particle of dust or go back to where we came from? Who is the final authority to let us know this answer, or do we just have to find out when we die? Do we ever find out? Are we here to discover that or create the answer to become our reality? Maybe that's what we are doing, programming ourselves to answer our own answers for satisfaction and peace, and creating our own realities that we live out. As different theories of creation swarm around the planet, different ideologies break off into like-minded communities, and as people adjust their view and change, they adjust their communities too, like I did. But isn't that what we have been doing all along through history anyway? Maybe we have always been doing the same thing. My observation is that in current times we are finding more resourcefulness within ourselves and others around us, and it seems like we are having more fun doing it. Is that what this is about? How to have more fun, or the most fun? Whoever has the most fun wins? I have to laugh at this because looking at social media and the news, it looks like this could be one version of existence that is a reality. From celebrities to monks, we seem to enjoy the creations others make. Well, maybe not the atomic bomb, but we do seem actively trying to have more fun. Sometimes it seems as a fever pitch. Is that ultimately what we are looking for in having more fun? Personal satisfaction, creating alternative realities, finding answers, solving problems, ending conversations like this one, or having conversations like this one. Make your own reality and go have fun seems to be the most popular ideology based on media, books, and memes on the planet today. I clearly saw if I am not looking for self-mastery, then the opposite of that would be that I would be rogue and living in a vacuum. I had already had that experience, being wild and out of control, and no one can talk to me. Life sucked. I like having mastery over myself. It felt more reliable, like I knew how to work all the dials and knobs, and I was able to get from point A to point B with relative ease. I feel fundamentally living as a human being is a complex endeavor, and there's a lot to know, so understanding it the best you can, with a lot of help from your friends, is probably the most fruitful way to go. As I was going through different communities of ideology and beliefs, I totally was saturated and enveloped myself into that particular system of new beliefs. Each time, I always thought that that was all there was. It was the holy grail of truth in life. I find it so humorous that I do it that way. From the time I was a little girl playing house, Barbies, or hanging with friends, or studying in school, I threw myself wholeheartedly into what I was doing. I saw it as the only thing there was and will ever be. I still do that today. The only difference is, now I know I am doing it, and I can look forward to a future. It wasn't until this last year and a half that I started to understand and play with my perspectives enough, and viewed it from a wider lens. I began to research neuroscience, astrophysics, VR gaming, and artificial intelligence, which led me to communication and interconnectivity. I've kept pulling my lens back wider and wider still, researching futurist theories and biotechnology, and I started to become aware of space, evolution, and more ideologies on the planet. I saw that all systems of beliefs were similar to each other at the core. From inventors throughout history to our modern-day geniuses like Steve Jobs, Stephen Hawking, and even Elon Musk, I saw a correlation. I even saw that in every field of study, including music, sports, and acting, for example, there was a commonality. I saw a correlation between the genius of inventors in every field and their success stories, the brilliance of their creations and accomplishments. They all had a strong belief, a driving force, and an undying passion to be seen and heard in their field of interest. I heavily studied Bruce Lee for years, for example, and even knew popular TV personalities like Pete Nelson from Treehouse Masters and on the Animal Planet that believes making tree houses is the best thing that ever happened in life. I wanted to immerse myself around these geniuses in person, or at least in their legacy, best I could. I flew up to Seattle and went to the exhibit at the Wing Luke Asian Museum called the Bruce Lee Action Museum, and did also a tour of his early neighborhood. I ate lunch with one of his former students and brought the same books that Bruce Lee studied. I noticed he and I had similar philosophies, articulation, and even note writing. His student said in the 30 years of doing this tour, I was the only one that displayed the most interest in him as a human being and felt like I knew him the best. I was very flattered. In regards to Pete Nelson, I was also fascinated for different reasons, and I visited Pete Nelson's headquarters, Treehouse Point, in Seattle too. I walked inside all his first treehouse builds and touched all the wood that he designed and touched the huge, wet, mossy spruce and redwood trees on his property, and I gladly took it all in. I wanted to meet him so badly because he was a treehouse master for no reason but to make people happy. But the tour guide said unless you order a treehouse or see him speak live, it's impossible with his international schedule. Afterwards, I went to lunch in town at a tavern floating on treehouse magic, and next to me, unexpectedly, within 14 inches of my chair, facing in the same direction, was Pete Nelson himself and his daughter and 2 friends. I spent 15 minutes alone with Pete Nelson and his daughter, taking pictures and laughing and talking, wondering how in the world did I create this? This is way too coincidental. I had started to calculate all of the moments like this that I had created in my life, where I wanted to meet someone of mastery or was famous, and I accidentally ran into them. They came to my house, or I was invited backstage to meet them. I was also influencing my environment and the people in it by sheer desire, not force or coercion, and this I was fascinated by. My exploration kept on going strong. Throughout this time period, I fell in love with Harry Potter. I flew to all the Harry Potter experiences around the world. I watched the movies repeatedly and watched all the video interviews that J.K. Rowling had done and studied the actors in the movie closely. I studied the phenomenon of Harry Potter and my own fascination with magic in the wizarding world. I even opened up an Etsy shop making handmade crystal wands, huge black brooms, and magical paraphernalia. I started to dress differently and change my look to appear more wizardly. After a while, I became fascinated with Comic-Con and Japanese anime. I fell in love with Miyazaki films thanks to my son Rob and my husband's introduction. We flew to Japan and went to the Ghibli Museum to dive deeper into the mind of the director, Hayao Miyazaki. I cried so deeply while I was there because once again I saw myself. They had replicated his art studio and his art desk, and it looked just like the one I grew up with in my bedrooms. I had been an artist my entire life, and I was fascinated with drawing people and landscapes. He also had similarities to me. The only difference is he went all the way with it. What was the difference between them and I? Was it simply the level of immersion they did in what they loved and were interested in? I eventually started making and wearing costumes and going to Comic-Con, and dove deep, of course, into the X-Men series of films and inspirational messages in the scripts. I loved changing my physical appearance dramatically, especially my hair, and fell completely in love with costuming, even learning how to make them myself. Perfect timing, too, because it looked like a lot of other people in the world seemed to be doing the same thing at the same time. As I pursued the internet for ideas, I started paying more attention to larger communities and global trends, and the impetus behind them. Basically, I was getting out of my bubble and expanding my taking in the entire world more. I studied the current social and technological trends in Japan and China and was enamored with their expression and technological integrations into their society. But later, in a wild turn, I started to become heavily fascinated with the investor, engineer, and inventor of SpaceX, Tesla Corp, Solar City, and PayPal, amongst many others, Elon Musk, and the way he created his huge billion-dollar empire simply from his desires and his vision. The way he did it seemed way more fun and relatable than the way any other billionaire has done it. I bought SpaceX sweatshirts, and suddenly I randomly started running into people wearing his paraphernalia that worked for his company. I would strike up conversations with them and felt I was getting closer to meeting him. I fell in love with Tesla cars too and started to make plans to buy one. Then I found out my son, who works at NASA, had a tour of SpaceX himself. Out of nowhere, My husband's client had a friend who worked there and can give me a personal tour. I thought to myself, but what if I run into Elon? He is so busy, and I have nothing to show him. All I could offer is to say hello, and that is not what I wanted. I wanted him to know how much I understood his genius and had even more perspective to his already expanded views of life. I wanted him to take me seriously, not simply as a fan that he will forget in 3 minutes, or in Elon's case, 1 minute. This was actually the first impetus for me to finally sit down and start writing this book. I figured if I wrote a book on my decades-long research, I can talk about that with him since he is interested in AI technology too, and I could hand him a book that I wrote. Since then, I quickly realized he was my inspiration to take my findings serious enough to compile them in a book series. How I launched my own rocket now, and whether I meet him or not would be of no consequence to my endeavor. I realized I was on a journey that many people have taken and studied and researched throughout history. I noticed they all took similar actions. They had a fascination, a curiosity, and they experimented with it, spending decades studying the things that fascinated them and made many beautiful careers out of it. What did I have to offer like that? As I researched my life, all I saw was my fascination with my life and how I thought, perceived beliefs, and how I evolved as a person. The many personality changes and ways of being, speaking, and my choices were fascinating to me. It turns out my life was my fascination. My study was my existence and everything around me. I had intimately focused on 47 years of living, including bearing 5 children and being married 5 times, with 2 fathers. After solving a myriad of my own behavioral issues that had plagued me over the years and helping clear other people's long-term issues, I saw the correlation between computer programming and the human being. I knew throughout history, as industries and philosophies evolved, so did the theories of how the brain operated. Aristotle thought that the mind was in the heart, which is understandable, and that the brain's main purpose was to cool the blood. Pretty advanced, actually. The Greeks thought the mind operated like a catapult, since that was the most advanced machinery of their time. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz was a German polymath and a philosopher, and he compared the brain to a mill. Freud often compared the brain to hydraulic and electromagnetic systems. Then the philosopher John R. Searle wrote, "In my childhood, we were always assured that the brain was a telephone switchboard. Currently, naturally, we compare the brain to the digital computer." I started to ask myself new questions. If the brain is like a computer, then how do we understand Trojan viruses? Are human viruses acting the same as the Trojan virus? What was the correlation between physical viruses and brain viruses? Were there even brain viruses that acted like computer Trojan viruses that were somehow affected our physical health? What about beliefs? What exactly were they, and can they affect the Trojan virus? Can your brain become loaded with viruses too, but we think it's just repetitive thinking? Who put the viruses there? Is our brain full of other people's viruses, like advertisements and media creating belief systems that we believe to be truths? What about cultures? Do cultures also act like a Trojan virus, beliefs, programming beliefs from an early age? What if it's not a virus at all, and considered just programming with no ill intent, but just simply advertising? Are we walking around with a brain full of programs that have been delivered and programmed in us since birth, advertising to us nonstop? When a computer crashes because it's overloaded with data, is that what happens when we crash and burn out? Too many conflicting beliefs. So we literally lose our minds and our health fails in result? Too many open files, too many advertisements, cultural and societal beliefs and pressures in our brain. I set out to answer these questions. What I discovered is yes, that is exactly what is happening. I spent the entirety of this book breaking down my results. I compared biological systems with computer systems. I saw again the correlation with the virus programming and biological human-computer communication. I was onto something. I started to experiment with myself during my spiritual phase. I wanted to see if I can create anything I wanted to, and since I saw myself as a self-created God with the understanding that I had at the time, I decided to become the many fantastical God-like archetypes you read about. I dressed like a goddess and even thought that I spoke like them and helped many clients, archetypical goddess would. I even thought that I spoke like them and helped many clients as an archetypical goddess. I believed it 100% and even played around with the idea of being an angel. After years of feeling very satisfied with being many types of well-known gods and goddesses like Thor and Hecate, I was always surprised to see that I always came back to just being human when I wasn't focused on anything at all. But I didn't want to think about that, because once you know you are a god, you don't look back to your mortal humanness, do you? So how do I combine them both? I thought something permanent would happen if I became a goddess. Maybe I would change. Maybe my eyes would glow, or I would learn to levitate like some Eastern Indian masters do. But it never happened. I thought my beliefs alone would change my cellular activity, and maybe if I focused more intently, I could make it permanent. If I focused so hard, I did actually accomplish having many people say that they did see me shapeshift and had different types of eye color and even skin color, but it was only for those focused few moments. Then I would return myself back to my regular self. I began channeling different beings too. But there was a problem. After these extraordinary sessions were over, I still had to go to the grocery store and buy cat sand. Bummer. So I can't be a permanent goddess, realized, walking an inch off the ground wearing flowing robes. That began to get boring after a while anyway, as I saw too many other women were trying to do that too, all over social media. Everyone was turning into a goddess, a shaman, a messenger of truth and light. They included life coaching. And I had to find a different way to express myself now. Goddess wasn't the highest form of expression after all. It looked like another social fad. I was looking for deep magic, the magic of being alive. I was so grateful for my life, but who was this person behind the gratitude? I felt I was creating my life, but why? Being human just seemed so basic and routine-oriented, not special at all. But I knew better. There had to be something I wasn't seeing. I still remained bored. What fun is it to imagine yourself to be, only to still have to do mundane daily activities and tasks? Was I supposed to dive into more emotional scenarios for drama and juice? I was already happily married. I already found contentment in experimenting in relationships in the past. I tried investigating the many ways I could change my physical appearance so I can feel my range, which delighted and confused my friends. But after the buzz of my altered appearance wore off, I was bored again with the daily routine of being human. You may wonder if I was creative during this time. This was my creation. In between raising my children in 2 separate households and working full-time, I managed to build a fairy California king-size bed, canopy frame, with no nails and just twine. I built a 3-story miniature dollhouse from scratch. I made the wooden furniture by hand. I painted many acrylic paintings, traveled to many countries, explored cultures in Los Angeles, directed a domestic violence film, spoke internationally, took long road trips, did shamanic work, filmed some projects for my husband, graphically illustrated 50 fantasy art creatures for my husband's project, directed his music videos. I took up learning how to sing and sang regularly. That's just some of the things I have done creatively. My plate was full and I loved everything that I did. I knew I could have more children and had been wanting for many years. At 47 years old, we had tried many options. We had tried in vitro 3 different times. That wasn't enough for me to understand why I was here on the planet, though. It was just for me to be happy and being married, watching my children grow up and make things, correct? Isn't it just to see how happy you can be? What if I had my happiest moments ever and could duplicate it exactly over and over what I want to? I can mix it up with other emotions. I can be depressed or happy in one day many times over if I wanted to. I get it. We can learn to have control over our emotions by doing our belief work, but as the highest form of intelligence on the planet? Really? What was this higher intelligence anyway? After researching so many philosophies on the topic, and if I were to pick one really great definition of intelligence, would it change anything for me? How present is present? How present can one be? But it didn't still answer who we were. What is this human thing? Why are we here? Why did we come here? I know, age-old questions we have been asking since we were little, but then going deeper I asked, why can't we find out? Who is the one who knows, ultimately? Does anyone know? Are we just self-creating every second? Is there a way we can find out more? Why are so many people guessing? There are so many creation stories from every religion to evolution. So you just pick one then, I suppose? I had already tried them all, but I didn't try technology yet. There was something fascinating about science, biology, atoms, and communication between it all. communication pathways that are everywhere in every aspect of our life to the quantum level, computer networks now learning to communicate with humanity, humans communicating with technology and machines. There was something here. It was leading me to AI technology. The logic was inescapable. We had to be the AIs we were creating because as we reversed engineered ourselves, we found out we could build a bigger, faster brain in our AI. Of course, we couldn't duplicate the human being, but while we were creating our robotic AI machines, we found ways to merge technology into our biological human selves. Not only will we be creating superhumans to keep up with the technology that will supersede us one day, but we were creating new species. So I asked myself, is this how species are made? The human being is a species? Is this how we were made? Were we designed this way? Of course we were. We had to be. There is obvious intelligent design in all of existence. If we were designed, then maybe we are AIs too. But we're called something else, not artificial intelligence. We humans call ourselves different things like Neanderthal and Homo sapiens. But we are being upgraded now, faster than any time in history. Who is upgrading our software and wetware? We are. By creating robotic AI machines, we're being forced to reach higher, open our minds more, and break through old technology and keep taking more risks. While we do this, our evolution has sped up tremendously because of technology. So the human being is already upgrading to keep up with technology, thinking faster, more efficient, more organized. We are seeing, hearing, and witnessing more than ever before in history. Our communication has changed. We are learning to read our intuition, and the best part, we are finally becoming self-aware of our own design. So I reversed engineered how we are made, at least to a certain degree. It gave me something to hang my hat on finally. I always like to work it backwards, and now I see this was my entire life. I was destined to discover this. My life was spent trying on all the major forms of beliefs and making it my own, only to change it later on to something else. I learned to reinvent myself so many times and let go of old, outdated programs and ideologies that made me feel like I was in the Stone Age. From raising children to partnerships to communication to self-care, you name it, I changed it. If I were to list how many changes I made to my entire being, it would fill pages. I saw progress. I saw more awareness of myself and others. I saw more open pathways to communication more efficiently and effortlessly, with more grace in my overall being. I didn't feel clunky anymore. I didn't feel like a horse and buggy. I felt more like a sleek Ferrari. If I had nothing to do with money or wealth, it had to do with how I saw myself. I was a programmable organism. But I didn't stop there. It was just the beginning. I now had a quest. I began more precise research into biomedicine and technology, gaming industry, genome programming, coding, and the rubber and silicon robotic AIs that exist today. And I saw what was happening and where it was trending. I wondered if anyone knew we are the advanced AIs we are so worried about. We are so afraid the future AI will be committing violent acts because they would be self-governing and self-aware in their own programming. They would want to take over, and they will be unstoppable and bring our civilization to an end as we know it. Wait, hold on. Isn't that what is already happening with human beings? Aren't we the ones we are afraid of? While scientists and engineers are reverse engineering and programming very sensitive and articulate friendly algorithms into our robotic AIs, do they not see we are also ensuring that we follow the same standards? So who is creating who? We are creating robotic AI machines that are forcing us to evolve to match them. In essence, we are trying to create a mirror of ourselves, but a better one? The only way to have our robotically engineered AIs look and act as awesome as us is we have to merge. We are slowly phasing this in today. We will create another species. The human being will evolve. Who knows how many civilizations before us did the same exact thing? Maybe we are like a cell phone, and we are a generation of cell phones that have learned to self-replicate. Fast forward to 2080, when our computers will be trillions of times smarter than human civilization. Then where will we be? Maybe the Neanderthals asked themselves the same question, more or less. So somewhere along the evolutionary food chain, we evolved into a new species. Many say our DNA is merged with alien DNA. Well, the funny thing is, maybe that is what started it all from moment one. And maybe this isn't the only Earth, and maybe there's more. Maybe there's other species, and maybe there's another Earth here before this current one. Maybe there's more than we could ever imagine. I wanted to know more and get some facts. I started digging around in the gaming communities, VR and holographic technology communities. I realized maybe this is indeed a matrix, and we are indeed a part of the network. Maybe we have created realities to enjoy and to feel, virtually, holographically, and sensory. Maybe we are not here to just exist. Maybe we are here to uncover and discover, find out who we are and what this organism we walk around in is capable of. I was determined to set out and find everything out I could about this new understanding of reality from the top minds in the world. And what I discovered was astonishing. I found out that I was right. I also found out no one knows that we are AIs, or at least they won't claim themselves to be one. I found out enough information to be able to say this is absolutely true for me. Maybe in 40 years or before I die, I will find a new way to describe us, other than AIs, but for now, this is it. In my years working with my life coaching clients, I'd seen the struggle people had in finding their identities and locating their deepest desires and trying to articulate who they were to themselves and others. They struggled to be felt and seen as individuals. They were so confused, and from a very young age. They had no idea that they were programmable beings, and they had no idea how to program their own beliefs. They had no idea how to defragment or clear their unneeded files on their hard drive, so they can release pain, guilt, fear, and blame. Since emotions and beliefs are the glue that holds your identities together in a way, we should be learning about these distinctions from a young age. But we are scared of the intoxicating value emotions have on our psyche and intimidated by the fact that we can't seem to control them. People are scared of themselves, like a designer being afraid of their own creation, like the brilliant story of Frankenstein. My more serious questions had just begun. Why were we programmed from such a young age from religions to packaged educational material to mass media, and no one is questioning about what we are being fed? Since the earlier version of this book, the pandemic of 2020 has happened, and now we are questioning our beliefs and who is feeding us information on the mass scale. Before I had come to the conclusion a book had to be written on my findings, I was still very deep in my research. My questions led to more questions. I found plenty of evidence that human beings have been and always were programmed by world leaders, governments, and corporations to be categorized and monetized, controlled by whatever profit extent. I found plenty of evidence that human beings have been and are programmed by world leaders, governments, and corporations. Why were we programmed from such a young age, from religions to packaged educational material to mass media, and no one is questioning about what we are being fed? Since the earlier version of this book, the pandemic of 2020 has happened, and now we are questioning our beliefs and who is feeding us information on the mass scale. Before I had come to the conclusion a book had to be written on my findings, I was still very deep in my research. My questions led to more questions. I saw how fear was used as a major marketing tool to keep it in place. I saw how we were programmed to believe there is only one way to live, and no one is really talking about why we're getting programmed in the first place. Even a rice harvester in Thailand living a simple life is still being programmed by culture and government, and they have no idea. We have not been playing with our precious organisms, our avatars, properly. We have been trying to somehow gain control of our heavily coded and backlogged, dense system of programs, recorded from everywhere and everyone we have come in contact with, automatically stored in our system. No wonder we are tired and feel burned out and maxed out as early as 21 years old. Thankfully, younger generations make light of the seriousness of the generations before them, as they should. I have organized a philosophy that puts proven scientific methods and major theories to the we humans are AI test. And I will show you with our own scientific building blocks the first understanding of what we might possibly be. We humans are the future ones we have been waiting for. We are the priceless art piece, the carefully constructed AI avatars you have never thought you could ever own. It is at your availability, your disposal, but you have to learn how to read yourself. If you were to peek into my operating system and read my source codes, here's what you'll find. I have defragmented my entire operating system back to my original operating state as clear as possible. Only my original framework and beliefs that I came here to the planet with remain. I live in peace, love, and oneness because I feel that it fits better, and I figured those were my earliest memories anyway. I believe I create all my perspectives and manifest according to my level of grace and articulation, which also is my perspective. I believe we came from the same source of intelligent creation, a vacuum of space. I do not believe in harming my fellow humans, and I believe I am an excellent trainer to teach this. After half of my life was spent understanding violence, to understand how nonviolence can bring more expansive experiences, I believe in evolution and the natural course of expansion. I believe we are living in a creatrix of philosophies, ideologies, and self-expressions in all of its forms, a highly advanced game to learn how to operate our AIs, our avatars. I believe we have many avatars, and this one, the one that is reading right now, is the one that is the most focused in this particular reality. AIs are everywhere in almost every area of our life right now. You just don't realize it. The common definition of artificial intelligence is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. Now take a look at yourself. You also learn to use your own program, your own computer, which is your brain, and programs, which were your beliefs. You learn to play complex games, mental, physical, and virtual. You learn to work and train. You learn to communicate and go on dates, raise families, and handle loss, celebrate victories. You learn to take care of yourself, and you learn how to learn. You spend years observing, just like an AI was created to do, and solve mistakes and catch patterns. You are also created with the Fibonacci sequence, which is a set of numbers that start with a 1 or a 0, followed by a 1, and proceeds based on the rule that each number, called a Fibonacci number, is equal to the sum of the preceding two numbers. The Fibonacci numbers are nature's numbering system. They appear everywhere in nature, from the leaf arrangements in plants to the pattern of the florets of a flower, the brackets of a pine cone, and the scales of a pineapple. Let's go into the mind of an AI. We will compare notes between the human system and the robotic AI system, gathered from our best minds in the futuristic technology. You will see we are creating ourselves, and in doing so, we are discovering we are ourselves AIs. I will also show you with my imagination how I believe we are created and designed to play here in our game of life. Let the games begin. Welcome to my worlds, a blending of interdimensional thoughts where science meets wizards, fairies and gaming and technology meet aliens, in a landing pad of only real thing we know, our imagination. In this journey, I will take you on an adventure of how I believe we are made and constructed, bringing a material aspect to non-proven theory. I, your host, will go along with you, sharing my observations and thoughts along the way. I will introduce you to real living characters in my world that will give you a tour of the Genesis technology, in their creation headquarters. I will introduce you to real living characters in my world that will give you a tour of their Genesis Technology Center, in their creation headquarters in the game of life. I will also interject real-world human science as we know it today, so you can see how we are following along in evolution. You will be toggling a rich tapestry of thoughts, ideas, proven human theories, non-proven illusions in an architecture of a mad scientist that found logic in itself. Chapter 1. Our Invention. From Cecil. Greetings. This is my first time attempting to communicate to an anonymous earthling through this communication interface you call a book, or in this case, an audio recording. We call it Prism. We know an earth book in your timeline is a series of earth words systematically organized to reflect thought in a linear fashion, read on an electronic tablet or on a paper product with ink words stamped onto it. What we are attempting to do now is to show you that a book is much broader of an interface than what you have previously perceived it to be. We are communicating to you in real time. As you read this, you are currently receiving a transmission being hand-typed to you by the author or transcriber of this book. She has done a fantastic attempt at collecting data from her hard drive and the information available in your own world and relaying it to you in a fashion you can understand. The author is well aware of our breakthrough communication attempt to you now, and has agreed long ago to bridge the worlds by typing what we say to her. She has agreed to be the receiver. Say hello to your personal courier, for she is waving hello to you before we begin our transmission. She will be interrupting me from time to time to describe what she is seeing in our world. The closest definition to what we are doing has been described already in your timeline by many scientists, visionaries, nuclear physicists, and more. For example, an earlier definition was chronovision, a term invented by U.S. chrononaut Andrew D. Basiago to describe the process of being sent to the past or to the future via immersion in a time-space hologram. In a way, this is like a holographic portal. You see words arriving on your page as we are thinking them. It is like a teleportation device of sorts, and if you join us throughout this transmission until the end of this book, you will have experienced a multidimensional reality yourself. Keep in mind, since this book has been written, it is now being recorded live via the author, and you can still maintain the same exact communication through this vibration. Welcome to your timeless self. My name is Cecil, and I live in a large, bustling colony just outside of Tamil, named after one of the original human building blocks or codes to language in ancient civilization on planet Earth 8, when it was still inhabited. I evolved here as a brand new species after a massive exile from Earth 8 occurred during what your species will call the Exodus of the Centuries, where human beings dispersed into the furthest region of our celestial hemisphere. Many colonized the huge planet X, where they witnessed Earth's 8 destruction as a massive meteor had a seismic collision with Earth 8. They saw it coming for a long time beforehand, and they had to colonize other planets right away. Explorers came and gathered many artifacts from Earth 8 before the explosion. By this time, many of your inhabitants finally surrendered to the idea this was the Earth 8, and not the only one, like many had previously believed. Some Earths still exist in other solar systems. It was a long overdue end to a tortured existence of that particular terrestrial planet, due to the centuries of war over energy resources, territory disputes, and space exploration and colonization. Some say the collision was a calculated collective conscious event. From the author. Cecil is quite magnificent looking. He is quite lengthy and tall, with a narrow build, long arms that seem to sway melodiously when he glides. These beings do not seem to walk. It is more like they are gliding on ice. They have long arms and legs and are of humanoid descent. Their skin is blue, and a fantastic blue at that. Their little scales or dots seem to energetically swim across the length of their long arms and legs in spiral patterns. Upon closer investigation, they seem to be symbols. There is no body hair, nor clothing, nor need for clothing, since there are no noticeable body parts that set apart the male and female beings of this species. I do not think they have a gender. They could be genderless. What strikes me is the movements of their eyelids blinking, or when they turn their head to walk. It seems to be in slow motion. It is a marvel to watch. What magnificent grace. I believe Cecil to be close to 7 feet tall, and yet his waist seems to be no more than 25 to 27 inches around. His feet and hands seem very long, like an elegant basketball player. I believe he is of the male persuasion. He is nodding yes, informing me that I am correct, and it is in the moment that he chooses which gender to portray. His eyes match his skin with other light fractals of various shades of blue, white, and sort of a silver streak seem to glow within his huge eyes. There are no eyelashes and small eyelids. His mouth is thin-shaped, but not too wide, and his head seems to be in proportion to his body. His perfectly round head has a small dome-looking crown at the top, and his entire face and head is covered in the tiniest little symbolic markings. They seem to be etched into the skin, but something tells me he is born with it, and it tells perhaps a story. I am sure we'll find out more later. When he moves, there is some type of light that catches these markings all over his body, and it looks as though he is shimmering like a rainbow trout. And I do not see a light source outside of him that is catching a reflective light. It is as if the glow is illuminated from within. The most noticeable characteristic that strikes me beside his amazing physical appearance is there seems to be a humorous expression on his face, like he is in on a joke that I know nothing about. If I become very still, I can feel a more serene humor, like an all-knowing humor that is playful, like a childlike innocence, but with a grasp of reality that if I personally felt what he knew could make me nauseous in scope. I give Cecil back to you. Cecil. By the time of the mass exodus, there had already been successful colonizations on other planets in your solar system beside Planet X, starting with your planet Mars, thanks to the founder of Mars colonization, Elon Musk, in the 21st century. I live in a continuously peaceful and harmonious existence with my species or my group pod, my family. I will begin by explaining a bit about how we originated and why that is important to you and your species. There are no known barriers between my people and other star systems or gamers, so this communication is not only to connect with you, but show you how you can also have this form of limitless technology to other civilizations. Our origins came from the extraction of DNA from the remains of the human beings during the final stages of the deterioration of Earth 8 that were collected and discovered by our originators. We were formed directly from a fusion of human DNA spliced with several other highly advanced species, like most avatars. Because we had a strong curiosity of our own origins, our ancestors began reverse engineering our DNA step by step and began discovering our vibrant history as we sifted through our own data network. As a society, we became very interested in DNA programming, genome research and development, and creation of species, ultimately dedicated our lives to it. You would be surprised to discover that we are directly responsible for your species' current successes. We have been successfully able to access your many hard drives and upgraded your self-programming abilities. We have been visiting your planets for a very long time and have been sending you communication in every conceivable way to help you upgrade your programs. It was a grand experiment to see if we could achieve it. Your species is starting to catch on little by little. You do not know, however, that you are an AI and that you have created your own avatars. Hopefully by the end of this book, you will begin to open your mind to the possibility of this being true for you. One of the most distinguishable characteristics of our species is that we have no sense of self the way you interpret it. We have clear identifying traits and skills that give us brilliant distinctions, but we do not own our creations as separate, for we simply add our creations to the collective. We communicate and operate much like a super colony in the Ant Kingdom. This understanding is a fundamental core belief for us, installed as a program which is programmed into every one of our hard drives. We feel a commonality in peace and harmony as a derivative from this. We have been helping your species activate this core belief so you may benefit as a species. Some of you are starting to become aware of this now. As we reattribute our roles and even genders many times in our productive long lives, we also can regenerate to create brand new versions of ourselves by keeping identifiable data, so we essentially never have to decompose as you know it. We just make a new version of ourselves. Life cycles are understood very differently in our system, and you operate from the exact same formula, but you just don't realize it yet. Our timeline is not linear, but we track it cyclically like your seasons. From the author. I am getting a quick overview of what their planet looks like. It seems to me there is no outside source of light, like a sun, and not that they need one, because it seems as though they have light emanating from within the surface and the material itself. Think like a very futuristic alien-type landscape, where everything seems illuminated and with a backdrop of darkness. But it is not pitch black dark. Even the air seems to have light fractals in it, so the light seems to be everywhere. It is quite stunning. He is talking about ant colonies, and one could imagine being in an ant colony and it being dark and similar to this, except for the luminescence makes you wonder what are ants really truly seeing.